I was sitting at the dining table, staring at the empty chair across from me. Anthony always sat there during dinner. He'd cut my chicken, pour my water, and tell me stories about his grandson's baseball games. But tonight the chair was empty. No text message. No phone call. Just silence that filled the room like thick fog. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed his number. When he answered, his voice cracked immediately. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Patterson. Your daughter called me this morning. She said my services were no longer needed. She said you couldn't afford me anymore." My heart stopped. I sat there, frozen, holding the phone against my ear even after the line went dead. Madison had fired Anthony. She didn't ask me. She didn't warn me. She just erased the one person who made my life bearable. I looked down at my cold dinner and realized something terrifying. To my own daughter, I was already gone. The wheelchair felt heavier that night. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I tried to wheel myself to the bedroom. I kept thinking about Anthony's voice. How broken he sounded. He cared about me. But my daughter didn't even have the courage to tell me herself. She just made the call and moved on with her day. I sat in the dark for hours, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with questions I didn't want to answer. Was I just a bill to her now? A burden she couldn't wait to be rid of? I thought about all the years I worked, all the sacrifices I made so she could have a better life. And this was how she repaid me, by throwing away my dignity like yesterday's trash. I closed my eyes and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not even anger, just cold, clear resolve. 3 days later, I heard her voice through my bedroom door. It was cracked open just enough for sound to slip through. She was on the phone with her husband, Derek. Her tone was sharp and businesslike. "Dad's care is bleeding the trust dry, Derek. Anthony costs $3,000 a month. If we keep this up, there'll be nothing left for us when he's gone. We need to cut costs now." I gripped the armrest of my wheelchair until my knuckles turned white. She kept talking. "Let the state handle it. They have programs for people like him. We're not a charity." Her husband mumbled something I couldn't hear. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "He won't even notice. He barely knows what day it is anymore." I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding in my chest. She thought I was too far gone to understand. But I heard every word. And I would remember every single one. Let me tell you who I am. My name is Robert Patterson. I'm 73 years old, and I wasn't always stuck in this chair. I used to run a construction company with my bare hands. I built houses, schools, and office buildings across 3 states. I worked 16-hour days so my wife, Claire, and our daughter Madison could live comfortably. When Claire got sick, I sold half my business to pay for her treatments. It didn't save her. She died 6 years ago, and I've been alone ever since. Well, not completely alone. I had Anthony, and I had my dignity, but Madison took both away in one phone call. She thought she knew everything about my finances. She thought she had it all figured out. But there's something she never knew, something I kept hidden, even from Claire. And now it was time to use it. The year Claire died, I did something I never told anyone about. I created a second trust. Not the one Madison knew about, the one she'd been watching like a hawk for years. This was different, completely separate, hidden in legal documents she'd never seen. My attorney, Harold, helped me set it up. "Why the secrecy, Robert?" he'd asked back then. I remember looking out his office window and saying, "Because I need to know my family loves me for me, not for what I can leave behind." That trust had been sitting quietly for 6 years. Growing, gaining interest, untouched. Madison had no idea it existed. She'd been so focused on the main trust that she never thought to look deeper. And now, sitting in my wheelchair with cold soup and missed medications, I knew exactly what to do with it. Harold would be getting a call from me very soon. There was one person who still visited me. Not Madison, not her husband, not even my old friends from the construction days. It was Jordan Myers. He was 28 years old, a certified nursing assistant, and the godson of my late wife's best friend, Patricia. Jordan started visiting me 2 years ago when Patricia asked him to check in on me. He came every Sunday without fail. He'd help me with exercises, change my bandages, and talk to me like I was still a human being. Not a patient, not a burden, a man. One night, after helping me into bed, Jordan sat down in the chair beside me. "You're not alone, Mr. Patterson," he said quietly. His eyes were honest, kind. I reached out and squeezed his hand. "I know, son. I know." That moment stayed with me, and when I thought about who deserved my trust, my assets, and my legacy, Jordan's face was the only one I saw.
I called Harold the next morning. My voice was steady even though my hands were shaking. "I need to make changes to the secondary trust," I said. There was a pause on the other end. "What kind of changes, Robert?" Harold asked carefully. I took a deep breath. "I want to reassign the beneficiary. Remove Madison entirely. Transfer everything to Jordan Myers." Another pause. Longer this time. "Robert, are you absolutely sure about this? This is a significant decision. Once it's done, it's very difficult to reverse." I looked at the empty dinner table. I thought about Anthony's broken voice. I remembered Madison's laughter on the phone. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. Harold sighed. "All right. I'll draft the paperwork. We'll need to meet in person to finalize everything." I hung up and smiled for the first time in days. Madison took away my care. Now I was taking away her future. That Sunday, Madison came over with a bag of croissants and her best fake smile. She set the bag on the table and leaned down to kiss my forehead. "How are you feeling, Dad?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I looked her straight in the eye. "Stronger every day," I said calmly. She laughed, straightening up. "That's great, Dad. That's really great. I'm glad you're doing well." She didn't ask about Anthony. She didn't mention the new agency she'd hired. She just sat there, sipping her coffee, talking about her kids' soccer games and her husband's promotion at work. I nodded along, smiling, saying all the right things. But inside, I was counting down the days until she'd learned the truth. She thought I was a helpless old man. She thought I'd forgotten how to fight. But I was more awake than I'd been in years. And I was ready. Madison hired a new agency. Cheaper. Much cheaper. Instead of Anthony, I got a rotating cast of overworked aides who barely had time to learn my name. One brought me soup so cold I could see the fat solidified on top. Another forgot my blood pressure medication 2 days in a row. One morning, an aide I'd never seen before walked in and handed me an adult diaper without saying a word. I stared at it, humiliated, my throat tight with shame. I didn't need diapers. I needed help getting to the bathroom on time. But this aide didn't care. She just dropped it on the bed and walked out. I sat there, holding that diaper, feeling my dignity crumble in my hands. And every time I felt that shame, I smiled a little wider. Because I knew something Madison didn't. My plan was already in motion. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Harold's office smelled like old books and leather. I wheeled myself up to his desk and he slid a thick stack of papers toward me. "This is it, Robert," he said quietly. "Once you sign, the secondary trust will be completely reassigned. Jordan Myers will be the sole beneficiary. Madison will have no claim to it." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. Not even a little. I signed my name on the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Harold witnessed each signature, his expression unreadable. When I finished, I set the pen down and looked up at him. "She won't know until it's too late, will she?" I asked. Harold shook his head. "Not until the trust is executed. And by then it'll be completely legal and irreversible." I nodded. "Good." I wheeled myself out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months. Madison thought she'd won. But she had no idea what was coming. Father's Day came and went. No visit. No phone call. Just a text message at 11:30 in the morning. "Busy with the kids today. Hope you're doing well. Love you, Dad." I stared at that text for over an hour. The words blurred together. I read it again and again, searching for something real. But there was nothing. Just empty words sent out of obligation. I thought about all the Father's Days before. The homemade cards. The breakfast in bed. The hugs that lasted too long because she didn't want to let go. Where did that little girl go? When did I become so easy to forget? I deleted her contact that night. I didn't block her. I just erased her name. If she called, it would come through as an unknown number. And maybe that's what she'd become to me. Unknown. A stranger wearing my daughter's face. I found an old shoebox in the closet. Inside were photos I hadn't looked at in years. Madison's high school graduation. Her smile so wide it looked like it might break her face. A road trip we took to Oregon when she was 12. We'd stopped at every ridiculous roadside attraction, laughing the whole way. And then a photo of Claire, my wife, smiling at the camera, her eyes full of life. I held that photo up to the light and whispered, "You wouldn't recognize her anymore, sweetheart. She's not the girl we raised." A tear rolled down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I just sat there, surrounded by memories of a family that no longer existed. And I made a promise to Claire's photo. I won't let her get away with this. I promise. I invited Jordan over during one of the new aides shifts. I wanted him to see what my life had become. He arrived with groceries and a smile, but the smile faded the moment he walked in. The aide barely looked up from her phone as she handed me my medication. She didn't check if I swallowed it. She didn't ask if I needed anything. She just tossed the pill bottle on the table and walked into the kitchen. Jordan's jaw tightened. He knelt beside me and saw the bruises on my arm from where another aide had gripped me too hard while transferring me to the chair. "Mr. Patterson," he said quietly, his voice shaking with anger. "You can't keep living like this." I reached out and patted his hand. "I won't be living like this much longer, son," I said, smiling. "I promise you that." He didn't understand what I meant. But he would. Very soon. Madison called me out of nowhere. Her voice was trembling, thick with fake emotion. "Dad, I've been thinking. The kids miss you. I miss you. We should do a family dinner. Maybe this Saturday?" I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "That sounds nice, sweetheart," I finally said. "I'd like that." She exhaled in relief. "Great. I'll pick you up at 6. That Saturday I wore my best suit. The navy one I'd worn to Claire's funeral. Jordan helped me with the tie, his hands steady and careful. "You look sharp, Mr. Patterson," he said. I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't dressing for a family dinner. I was dressing for her reckoning. Metaphorically speaking, of course. But in my mind, I was attending the funeral of the daughter I thought I knew. And I wanted to look my best. Dinner was at a fancy restaurant downtown. White tablecloths. Candles. Soft jazz playing in the background. Madison raised her glass of wine and smiled at everyone around the table. "To family," she said brightly. Her husband clinked his glass against hers. Her kids giggled and reached for their sodas. I just sat there watching her. She thought she was in control. She thought everything was going according to her plan. But I knew something she didn't. Dead men don't toast. And forgotten fathers don't forgive. I raised my water glass and smiled back at her. "To family," I echoed. But inside, I was thinking about the paperwork sitting in Harold's office. The trust she'd never see. The inheritance that would never be hers. She had no idea. And that made the smile on my face so much easier to hold. Jordan drove me to the bank on a Tuesday morning. Harold met us there with a briefcase full of documents. We sat in a private room while the bank manager reviewed everything. The secondary trust was now completely under Jordan's name. The property in Vermont. The stock portfolio worth $400,000. The small condo in Florida that Madison had been dreaming about for years. All of it. Gone. Transferred. Irreversible. Harold slid the final document across the table. "Congratulations, Jordan," he said. "You're now the sole beneficiary of the Patterson Secondary Trust." Jordan looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. "Mr. Patterson, I don't know what to say." I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "You don't have to say anything, son. You earned this. By treating me like a human being." Jordan's eyes filled with tears. And for the first time in months, I felt like I'd done something right. Madison went to Maui with Derek. She posted photos on social media. Sunset dinners. Beach yoga. Cocktails by the pool. Meanwhile, I missed a doctor's appointment because my aide didn't show up. I ran out of insulin for 2 days because no one refilled my prescription. When Madison finally came back, tanned and glowing, she walked into my house with a smile. "Dad, you look good," she said, dropping her designer bag on the couch. I looked up at her from my wheelchair. "Did you enjoy paradise?" I asked calmly. She laughed. "It was amazing. We really needed that break." I nodded slowly. "I'm glad one of us got a vacation." She didn't catch the edge in my voice. She just kept talking about snorkeling and luau's. And I just kept smiling. Because while she was living her best life, I was preparing her worst nightmare. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. Thick, official looking. Delivered by a courier who made Madison sign for it. I wasn't there, but Jordan told me what happened. She opened it at her kitchen table, expecting some routine financial update. Instead, she found a formal legal notice. Patterson Secondary Trust, beneficiary removal. Her hands started shaking as she read the words. Madison Louise Patterson has been removed as beneficiary, effective immediately. All assets have been reassigned to Jordan Alexander Myers. This decision is final and irrevocable. Jordan said. She went pale. Completely white. She read it 3 times, her lips moving silently. Then she grabbed her phone and started dialing. My phone rang 10 times that day. I didn't answer once. I just sat in my chair listening to it ring, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. Her voicemails got more desperate with each call. The first one was confused. Dad, I got some paperwork today. I think there's been a mistake. Call me back. The second one was angry. Dad, what the hell is going on? Who is Jordan Myers? Why is his name on legal documents? By the 10th voicemail she was screaming. You can't do this to your own daughter. I'm your family. You're being manipulated. Call me back right now. I played that last voicemail 3 times. Each time I heard the entitlement in her voice. The assumption that I owed her something. That my money was hers by birthright. I saved the voicemail. Not because I wanted to remember her voice, but because I wanted to remember why I did what I did. And every time I doubted myself, I'd play it again. Madison started texting the entire family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone who would listen. Dad is mentally declining. He's being taken advantage of by some stranger. We need to intervene. She painted me as a confused old man who didn't know what he was doing. But Jordan posted a photo on social media that same day. It was the 2 of us sitting in my living room, both smiling. I was holding a newspaper with that day's date clearly visible. The caption read, "Spending time with Mr. Patterson. Sharp as ever. More aware than some people will ever be." The comments section exploded. People who knew me from church, from the construction company, from the neighborhood all chimed in. Robert's mind is fine. I just spoke with him last week. He knows exactly what he's doing. Madison's narrative crumbled in real time. And she had no one to blame but herself. Her attorney contacted Harold. Tried to contest the trust. Claimed I was mentally incompetent. Claimed Jordan had manipulated me. Harold's response was swift and brutal. He sent back a file 2 inches thick. Medical records proving my cognitive health. Documented evidence of Madison's neglect. Recordings of phone calls where she discussed cutting my care. Logs from the aid agency showing missed medications and injuries. An assigned affidavit from me, dated and notarized, explaining exactly why I made the decision I did. Madison's attorney called her after reviewing everything. Jordan told me later that she threw her phone across the room. There wasn't just no case. There was an airtight wall around me. And she couldn't break through no matter how hard she tried. I didn't mean to, but I watched her life unravel from my sunroom. She'd been planning her future around my death. The Florida condo was supposed to fund her kids' college. The stock portfolio was supposed to be her retirement. Now she had nothing. She sold her SUV. I saw it listed online. She pulled her kids out of private school and enrolled them in public. Derek started working weekends. Their annual vacation to the mountains was canceled. I watched all of it happen through social media posts that became less frequent and far less glamorous. Part of me felt a flicker of guilt. But then I'd remember the cold soup. The missed medications. Anthony's broken voice on the phone. And the guilt would disappear like smoke. She came to see me one last time. No warning. She just showed up at my door, pale and hollow-eyed. Jordan let her in but stayed close, protective. She walked over to my wheelchair and knelt down beside me. Her hands were shaking. "Dad?" she whispered. "I made mistakes. I know I did. But I'm still your daughter. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked at her for a long time. I saw the little girl who used to sit on my lap and read me bedtime stories when I was too tired to read to her. But I also saw the woman who laughed about putting me in a state facility. "That's what makes it worse," I said quietly. She blinked, confused. I pressed the call button on my chair. Jordan appeared in the doorway. "Please escort Madison out," I said. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. But I didn't look at her again. Jordan helped me sit up straighter in bed that night. He adjusted my pillows and made sure I was comfortable. "You okay, Mr. Patterson?" he asked softly. I looked at him. This young man who wasn't my son. Who didn't owe me anything. But who showed up every single week with kindness in his eyes and care in his hands. "I think I finally am," I said. He smiled. "Good. You deserve that." I reached out and patted his hand. "You're a good man, Jordan. Better than I deserved. But I'm grateful you're here." He didn't say anything. He just squeezed my hand back. And in that moment I realized something important. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. I sit here today in my chair looking out at the garden Jordan helped me plant. I'm well fed, well cared for, and for the first time in years I feel loved. Not by the person I raised, not by the daughter I sacrificed everything for, but by someone who saw me as more than a bill, more than a burden, more than a cost to be cut. Madison canceled my caregiver to save money. So I canceled her inheritance to reclaim my dignity. Some people might say I was cruel, that I should have forgiven her. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. It doesn't mean pretending betrayal didn't happen. I gave Madison everything. My time, my money, my love. And when I needed her most, she saw me as an expense. So I made a choice. I chose the person who valued me. And I'd make that choice again. Every single time.